once you have a binding contract, go to court, you'll win. Think about these things, big bombs. Out on here. A lot of people are not going to like the fact that what I'm saying seems very repetitive and redundant, but I have to be because people don't listen. And last 4 shows now, I've basically said the same thing, and I keep re-saying it in different ways, expecting maybe somebody to finally get the idea. So I can tell by the questions being asked that people don't quite get it yet. They're kind of like, "Oh yeah, I get it. I know what you're saying," but they don't yet. Because if they did, they wouldn't be asking some of the questions they're asking. Um, because the remedy is just all of a sudden just you can't stop finding it as soon as you figure out the way the system works. So I'm going to keep talking about it until you get it. I'm going to keep talking about it in different ways. But anyways, that's besides the point. The law stuff is really just kind of like a sideline thing, anyways. And I'm going to keep harping on the fact that we all need to come together as a people. When I first started talking about the March Against Monsanto movement, long time ago, when they had 1 million people march against Monsanto, and I came up with that theoretical situation where instead of marching against Monsanto, uh, you every one of those people that took part in that march just instead pooled $100 together. 1 million people times $100, you got $100 million. And if they just kept doing that every month, you went out of your way to make sure you had $100 of disposable income left over to invest, not in an RSP, but in an organization that was buying farms, ranches, businesses, you name it. Do that every month for the last 14 years when I first suggested this. Where would you be as it grew exponentially because you roll the profits of such organization back into itself to continue to expand? You would be far bigger than BlackRock right now. That's all it would take. That it's taken them hundreds of years of theft, rape, murder, torture, you fucking name it, to get where they are right now, to where it's all represented by an organization called BlackRock that's in control of 9 trillion in assets, and growing. But that's just so I'm trying to tell you guys, this can easily be beaten just by organizing and unionizing. And I'm not even saying that I want to be the one to do it. I'm telling you that that's the way to do it. It's not that hard. A coffee shop. It was a Clifford Coffee House, I guess. I don't know. That's me. That's my person, my coffee shop. And I didn't want to learn how to run the business. I didn't want to serve coffee. Uh, I just wanted to be entitled and sit back and do nothing but collect checks. So I call up Tim Hortons and I say, "Hey, listen, I want to make my coffee shop at Tim Hortons so that it will be more successful by being part of a union, a larger network of coffee shops." And so your coffee shop is pledged to Tim Hortons. You sign contracts, and next thing you know, your coffee shop is now a franchise. And even though you own all the equity in it, it's all your money, it's all your entitlements. It's actually controlled entirely by somebody else, and you have no say in anything anymore. Nothing is different than what's going on with the legal person. Nothing. It would only be more obvious to you if Tim Hortons started arresting store owners for not following Tim Hortons policies. So, Canadian government, for instance, has no authority greater than what Tim Hortons does over their franchises. It's just that Tim Hortons is not allowed to arrest people, because then you'd figure out that's all that's going on with Canada as well too. That's it. I'm not going to say specifically franchise rights, but it's when you give somebody, for instance, I'll give you a for instance, so that people don't think I'm not going to use particular concepts or words. For instance, if you gave somebody blank, unlimited, unrestricted power of attorney, they could do anything with you. Anything. They could have you locked up in an insane asylum in your best interest because they've got absolute power of attorney over you. That's the whole point of having a power of attorney, to speak for you, like a representative, maybe, I don't know, in parliament. So, the acts and statutes are a smokescreen. They're a smokescreen, so you don't figure out that all they ever needed was that authority, that power of attorney over you, to order you around in the first place. So they make it, oh yeah, we got these action statutes you got to follow. But really, that's a smokescreen that doesn't even need to be there to prevent you from figuring out that because of the jurisdiction issue, they can just order you to do something anyways. So they're all smokescreens. The way the government was to be set up with so many seats for this and so many seats for that and so many council members and directors, and they got to meet once a year and do this and do that. When you get through all that shit, the only other thing that whole fucking document says in 1867 is you control what's been vested in you. So I'll leave that. Then you gave him, I want to think of the proper word. We can just stick with absolute control. The word so this is what I mean by this stuff is so easy. Now, I just said literally the wording they use in that document themselves in 1867. And now there's going to be people out there that without doing anything else are just going to go off and come to their own conclusions about what any of it fucking means and start writing papers and firing documents off or teaching this to other people and then claiming they fucking taught it to me maybe years ago or something like that. I don't fucking know. Selling information. How many people are going to do something very simple like go to a legal dictionary and look up the word vested? Vested. Do you think there's a reason why the word vested makes up a whole bunch of the bigger word invested? I, I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there that maybe people might want to go look up and look into simple fucking words that tell you what's going on. That you've established the fact that you're volunteering, right? And much like my scenario with the guy who mows the lawn for free for a long period of time and then just stops doing it without notice, is he liable? Yes. You got to give notice. You got to say, hey, listen, I apparently I've been volunteering unbeknownst to me for my entire life. And I'm sorry, I can't afford to do it anymore. You've sucked the life out of me and you're going to kill me like a fucking parasite. So, unfortunately, at this time, you have to start now paying me for every fucking service that you ever want from me ever again moving forward. And you got to pay me up front and you got to give me a liability waiver. Um, Now, another way of thinking about a liability waiver, by the way, is that what's the word for it again? People that are in jail, for instance, that they want to get testimony from to help lock up somebody else. Do they not offer that person immunity from prosecution? Right? Why would you ever do anything without immunity for what you may or may not do while acting as an agent for that party? Okay, immunity. You want me to do anything? First thing I need is fucking immunity. Immunity from prosecution under any act or statute because I'm not consenting to be governed by it while I'm working for you. I'm an independent contractor. Fuck off. Contractors get this stuff. Most people, it takes a while to come around. So, again, all you got to do is just pretend that you're McDonald's and Her Majesty the Queen, the organization that speaks for 36 million people in Canada, comes into your restaurant and wants to order something from the menu. Well, have a very exhaustive menu. And as people, anybody that's owned a business knows when it comes to insurance on their business, right? Ask McDonald's how many times they've been sued for an old lady dumping hot coffee on themselves. No matter how many fucking notices they put on the coffee cup saying caution, it's hot. Next is going to be a fucking siren on the coffee cup lid with flashing lights with a voice screaming, caution hot, don't dump on your lap, you'll burn yourself. And they're still going to get fucking sued and they'll still lose. Until you have that person give you a signed liability waiver, immunity document where they say, yeah, I agree that while I'm in your restaurant, if I spill hot coffee myself, you are not fucking liable. So it's not enough to just state anything. You want it in writing, and anything that they want from you, anything they want from you. They come into McDonald's, they want to order fries off your menu. Yep, not a problem. As soon as I have a signed liability waiver form and the money up front, I will make you a small fry. And until that happens, you can go fuck yourself. Sole proprietor, same as independent contracting. Absolutely. Right. Even a corporation does independent contracting. That's my corporation does independent contracting all the time. It's independent and it contracts. So that's an independent contractor. Yeah. Sole proprietorships, great. Probably even better because you don't have to worry about shareholders and certain filings and whatnot. It's easier to do. Anybody can do it. In fact, your person literally is a sole proprietorship. So it's A4 age document. So we got this 4-page up ourselves. Moot court style practice scenarios would be a great way to learn this. Once you have a binding contract, go to court, you'll win. Some are asking because I'm needing to learn tax stuff and how to set up my business. Yeah. Well, it just remember it's all contracts. Even though you have a tax number, it's just an account. It's just a capability. It doesn't mean you automatically have to do anything. It means you have the ability to do something now, right? Like you now have the added ability to be a taxi service for Her Majesty the Queen. Does that mean they come and they get a free ride every time they order you to go somewhere? No, it means that you're now registered and licensed and able to do something. You're capable of it. You've been approved for it. It's there to now use. It doesn't mean it binds you to fuck all. It required your ignorance to volunteer for everything. That's what that scam requires to work, and you to not know that you can always charge for your services. You don't truly understand what that actually means to never have to do anything except under your terms and conditions ever. There's no such thing as you being bound to a contract that forces you to work for free ever. They can never get around that, just like they can never get around your right of self preservation, self defense, right? Self preservation. I'm sorry. In the interest of self preservation, you need to give me immunity and payment up front before I do one fucking thing. Both those concepts work for this scenario. Both slavery, anti slavery laws, and self preservation, which is higher yet. Okay. So I will know if you got this or not based on the questions that I continue to get. No, 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 no. Moot court. What I meant was real life scenarios would be good. Yeah. I've given you a number of real life scenarios, stretching from McDonald's to Tim Hortons to every situation, like coffee shops, mowing lawns, you name it. Um, I've given you like a lot of gravy here, actually. So just get a tax ID number, no matter if it's a sole proprietorship or LLC or corp. Yeah, absolutely. A tax number is an ability. Nowhere does it state you must now do anything for free. It's an ability. You've been approved to do certain things. For instance, if you got approved for a credit card with a $10,000 limit, does that mean you instantly owe $10,000? No, it means you now have the ability to run up $10,000 on that card. It's all about abilities and being recognized and licensed and approved for certain things, right? Yeah, there's no obligations that come with any of this stuff that make you do things for free. I can't express enough what an important concept that is that none of this stuff obligates you to do anything for free. And now you know what to say. That's why I'm trying to tell you all this is the only thing I'm ever going to help you with, because you don't need anything else. Okay, this alone is enough. This alone is enough. Trying to translate Her Majesty to Uncle Sam, same thing. Different fiction, same thing. Same, absolute same type of pile of shit. Similar things that are similar are not one and the same, but they are similar. They are close to identical. So yeah, it's exactly the same fucking thing. It's just replace Her Majesty to Uncle Sam. It is literally the same thing. I want me to say it one more time. It's literally the same thing. Well, no, I hereby accept that on the condition that I change the terms and conditions to show that this. No, 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 no. See now that's you're defaulting, right? You're acting in bad faith now. You're trying to renegotiate after you've already received compensation, and do not ever back down on that kind of stuff. Don't ever let somebody fucking get away with doing that kind of stuff. If this people don't understand the contracting to the point where they don't know that you can waive liability and easily give somebody a get out of jail free card for not performing on something verbally, just by them. The government's doing this with us every day when you go to court. These are masters of contracting. They're getting us to waive any performance that we may have bound them in by with some of our contracts, right? Just by our actions and by what we're saying. So this is what I was trying to say. When you got to stick to your guns on things, when you tell somebody, well, I accept your offer on condition that you pay me $10 for the burger and you give me a liability waiver. And the cop looks at you and says, listen, you give me that burger right now or I'll beat the living fuck out of you. And you go, oh man, okay, fine. Here's your fucking burger. Okay. Well, okay, aside from the fact you just got threatened, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. But if they can coerce you into reneging on your own terms and conditions, you can't collect on that kind of stuff. This is contracting. This is all by more than it's written and verbal contracts, but also even just in your actions, you can contract with people and accept. And I go back to the sex scenario, right? Um, when people engage in a sexual encounter where everything is clearly based on consent by actions, but the whole time one of the people involved in it is going, no, 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 right? This is why men that have been accused of rape get off when it comes out that it turns out that everything was actually quite consensual. I mean, like clearly indicated in the encounter that that was wanted and even asked for. So these it's all contract law. Like even when they're doing rape cases or any of these sexual assault cases in the courts, that what the court's looking for are the details of the contract, the agreement, as to determine whether or not it was really rape or if it was consensual or anything else, right? They don't want you to know it's all contract, everything, every encounter is a contract, everything is a contract or a contract being enforced. Everything. There isn't one thing that isn't. Literally. You can outright say no, right? If somebody wants your services, you have the right to outright say no. Yeah, you don't have to stay in honor by having a conditional acceptance back. I like making completely unreasonable terms and conditions for my performance. Um, because somebody might actually say yes, right? Or they may force you to do it, which by their action is acceptance of your terms and conditions, right? And that's actually happened. Where again, I told you guys the instance there where I sent that notice into a court, which was in essence a fee schedule on behalf of somebody else because they were already in custody, with my delegated authority that they had given me, which I had in writing as well. Mm, and let them know what the fee was going to be per hour for being in jail. That made it into the newspapers. And when it was read out into the court by the judge before issuing sentence at the sentencing hearing, and they made a point of saying, I received this, by fax, and I'm going to read this onto the record before sentencing. And they did. The Crown attorney jumped out of the chair and screamed, Your Honor, that's a preposterous amount of money. Yeah, it was. And you can enforce it. That's a whole other conversation. Back then, we were a little bit ill prepared for that because that's like 2010. But it's not the first instance we've had of that where the only objection the Crown had in the courtroom was at the rate, the amount. Not, no one screamed, you can't do that. You can't bill for this. We're not paying you. It was, that's preposterous. Yes, it was. Okay. This shit's real. What do you think about natural law being brought up in court? Contract law is natural law. Why bring up natural law? What natural law are you going to bring up? Gravity? Are you going to bring up fucking density? Are you going to bring up lead poisoning by something, a lead projectile being fired at you at a super high velocity? Like what natural law is being brought up? Natural law won't help you. Contract law will. You have a natural right to not be enslaved and to preserve your own life. And that is what is going to allow you to enforce your contracts once you lock them down into one. Did you do the added steps of notice of true bill and notice to debtor? Did you get your defaults to the lien stage? Oh, yeah. I had liens in 2012 against the legislative building in Manitoba and the downtown courthouse for $790 million. And I was receiving letters from the RCMP demanding I remove my lien from them as well, which I got back to them and said I'd be more than happy to remove my lien after you paid me. That was 6 months before I went to jail for the next 4 years. I don't even know where my paperwork is anymore. Everything was stolen in my beach house raid. They went after all my documents. Everything was fucking taken. That's why they went there, is because of the liens. The original documents that I had that were in my office, that was industrial espionage. They had to go after that original paperwork, even though I had copies, but that's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. How the hell does enforcement go then? The courts will enforce that. The courts are there to enforce contracts and commerce. That's literally what they're there for. You never have a contract. That's the problem. You think you do, you don't. And unfortunately, it is an uphill battle, but it also isn't. It's simple civil rules of procedure and defaults and certificates. Current court structure is tyranny, only because you don't know what's going on there. Were your liens based on tacit procuration of agreement? Well, yes, the default process was because nobody rebutted, but my initial documents, I had all the proof in the world that I had a properly filed and served what back then we called a fee schedule for how much things were going to cost if they chose to interact with my person. So it was all legit. In fact, a team of lawyers from TD Bank went over my paperwork because I was dealing with a private banking center at that time. See, I was doing a lot of stuff I've never spoken about to with most people, and they went through all my paperwork and they got back to me and they said, "Yeah, this is all legit." Now, I won't tell you the ending of that story. It's good, but back then I didn't know where to go do what they asked me to go do. I do now. That's the most precise I'll get. But they said, yeah, like your liens are good. Like it's now go do this. They literally told me what to go do with my liens. The lawyers for TD Bank in Toronto head office. Um, so that I know that was all correct, and I know that's why they went to my house, and I know that's why I became the Canadian renowned terrorist um, to discredit me because of my valid lien against the legislative building and the courts that I was in the process of the last couple of months. I was a couple of months away from making that a reality that probably would have shown up in a court record that they could never get rid of. So instead, I went to jail for 4 years and all my paperwork's missing. Color of law puts them in liability, keep them in check. Well, I'm not going to agree with that. I'd say that contract law keeps them in check, puts them in liability. Not, but you absolve them of liability when you volunteer and you let them out of their contractual obligations. And you don't enforce. The big one for government employment, coercing job or be fired. 8 notices of fee schedules or risk courts ineffective as part of the same corporation. No, the courts definitely are independent, whether we like to believe that or not. I was very adamantly opposed to that belief at one point in time. I've seen enough. They will enforce, but the again, I'm not going to say it's a benevolent system, but they will enforce a cut and dry contract. It'll never make it to court if you've done it right. Actually, my brother had some wonderful stuff on that a couple of weeks back. I spoke to him about to do with obviously without getting into any particulars at all, but basically they're obligated by law to settle with you if it looks like you have what the courts will award. So if you have enough and you've done it right enough, it will never make it to court. They will settle with you out of court, and they're actually, it's not even a choice. They're obligated to by law. That's their own law that obligates them to do that. That's his stuff he found. I'm not going to get into that anymore. Now you got to remember also when it comes to judges, somebody said the judge is acting like a king. Have control of your person long before you go into any arena, because if they control the person, you could inadvertently bind yourself to arbitration, um, where they can, on behalf of your person, waive the fees and the liability, because that's how they got out of the expensive lawsuits from 100 years ago, was by getting everybody into a social scheme like social insurance or any other kind of insurance scheme, where as long as they have the authority to speak on your behalf, they can waive your ability to sue. That's what happens. Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation being the key example of that. Anybody who's insured through Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation cannot sue another person insured through Manitoba Insurance Corporation, Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation, because it's a conflict of interest. You're part of the same insurance company, so anything that is done is through binding arbitration. So, which looks no different than a courtroom, I might add. So, when you people think you're in a courtroom, well, you are, but there's all sorts of different types of courtrooms, and you are likely in front of a guy who has the authority to act as an arbitrator under contract. You're not in front of a judge, or the judge is acting as an arbitrator, and there's no human rights there, there's no contracting rights, there's no anything. He's arbitrating between two parties under contract, to limit liability, and that's the whole point of these schemes, is to limit liability, because 100 years ago well, even 50 years ago, these insurance companies are getting sued for millions and millions of dollars, like say what happens down in the United States, where that system is still running rampant. Well, up here in Canada, they got smart with that and said, hey, we'd save a lot more money if we all got together, all us insurance companies, all us businesses, and entered an agreement where none of our members are allowed to sue any other organization's members, and everything must go to binding arbitration to limit the damage awards to save us money. And that is where you're at right now, is almost every single situation where you walk into a courtroom or any other kind of a hearing of any kind, you are in arbitration and you're before somebody who has authority to do things on behalf of your person with or without your consent or even your knowledge. Okay. Just think, I'm throwing it's, there was some gravy, to just go through that and think about that for a little while. So we'll see who I piss off with that. What are your thoughts on starting a corporation and having a lien in your name? Not, you don't need that at all. Who do you send the service agreement to? Well, the service agreement, who's trying to contract with you? In Canada, in the case of Her Majesty, Her Majesty has a lawyer. Her Majesty, at every level of Her Majesty, has an attorney that generally deals with all matters. Generally. That's why they're called an attorney general. General use, all matters generally speaking. Doesn't mean the attorney general himself or herself or itself or him, her, or Zer, Zex, Zamfi, the fucking dolphin, whatever fucking gender they are. It doesn't mean that actual flesh and blood incandescent beam of love is opening your letter. There's a team of lawyers underneath that office that all do work for that office and will respond and read to all letters addressed that office in a limited scope of authority on behalf of that office. Many Supreme Court cases are settled out of court. Oh yes. Any that have a chance of winning are settled out of court. You don't need, and that's not just like Supreme Court, but like Court of Queen's Bench, Superior Court, all those kind of things. Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that you may not be required to waive one right to exercise another. Oh, absolutely. That's an unconscionable act to say that you can only exercise one right by waiving another. That's setting you up to fail. That's an absolutely unconscionable act. They can't do that kind of stuff. Well, they do it, but what they've done is actually quite criminal and against the law, and you will win a claim against them if they try to make you do that. Unilateral. There we go. Sorry. It's a unilateral contract. Think about that for a second. Unilateral. It's like when you hear on news stories that the United States is in unilateral negotiations with some country in Africa. That means that they've said to that other country, you fucking give us whatever we want or we will bomb the living fuck out of you. That's what unilateral means. One way. It's a one way negotiations. How the fuck? That's not even there's no such thing as a one-way negotiation. That's a demand. That's what that is. That's a demand. That's a threat. A one-way negotiation is a fucking threat. So, yeah, unilateral. I'm trying to make you guys realize that we've always had the freedom to contract. We were kept ignorant to make sure that we weren't able to enforce it, and then we didn't even know that's one of the things that we were lacking. That's why the distractions. They want to go have you going off chasing all sorts of unicorns and bullshit and fucking pots at the end of the rainbow to keep you from figuring out that that's all you ever had to do was learn how to contract. The instant that you've technically given somebody notice that whatever authority was granted to them has now been withdrawn, it's already over as of that instant. They have to be given notice of that though. Now, that doesn't mean everything's going to flip overnight within the system because they don't like to give up power easily. So that's usually just the beginning of the fight. However, your claim, your valid claim, goes right back to the instant you can prove the timestamp on that registered mail delivery that they were given notice, right? They were given notice that their powers were withdrawn, and that's when it's over. That's when that is when it is technically legally over. Now it's the fight. So, anyways, I'll leave that at that. A written conveyance of power, which is all really a power of attorney document is. A power of attorney document, I always make sure I put on any documents, revocable at will. Like anything that I've done is revocable at the snap of a finger, verbally on the phone. That's it. You don't represent me anymore. Fuck you. Right? It's done as of that moment. Now, if that person continues to represent you in a way that you have withdrawn from them, they're absolutely liable. And that's really all the notice of liability does. It lets them know that they're liable for anything that they do after a certain point, depending on what it is that you've done or taken from them or some action they've done that caused you harm. So it has to be situation relevant. Can I repost this video again truncated, Dean? PTL Media now. How truncated? I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm going to be putting up on my own Odyssey account. Try to post, if anything, like if you want to put some clips together and then make sure you point people towards my Odyssey, that'd be cool. Then I'm very okay with that. Yeah. Anyways, own that shit. All right. Everybody have a good night. Okay. Bye bye.